It's Monday, October 25th, 2010.
In this week's BeakerBeat,
The AdvaMed 2010 MedTech Conference draws corporate leaders, industry experts, and celebrities alike to the nation's capital. Find out who attended and the key topics on their minds. We'll have a complete wrap-up from Washington, D.C. Plus, like Rocky Balboa, J&J continues to take body blows. Will somebody please stop this fight? And speaking of fights, AdvaMed 2010 is the place for a rock'em sock'em showdown for BeakerBeat heavyweights. All that and more in this week's edition of BeakerBeat. Hello everyone, welcome to this week's edition of BeakerBeat. I'm Mike Justice. This week we come to you from AdvaMed 2010, the MedTech Conference in Washington, D.C. The conference drew hundreds of industry leaders and companies from across the country and the globe. In fact, the event set a new attendance record in its fourth year, with more than 1,700 medical device and diagnostics leaders making the trip to D.C. They represented over 360 companies from 24 countries and 33 states. Featured speakers included FDA Commissioner Dr. Margaret Hamburg, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services Chief Dr. Donald Berwick, U.S. Secretary of Commerce Gary Locke, and CBS News anchor Katie Couric, who delivered the keynote address. Couric spoke about the importance of medical technology and her own family's experience with colorectal and pancreatic cancers. The unanimous feeling from attendees was the conference provided tremendous value and unprecedented access to industry peers.
I get two things. One is just a chance to meet other people in the industry, particularly at a senior level, where you have a sensible discussion, which isn't a competitive environment, is good. The other one would normally have been associated with the UK trade delegation here. So actually you get access to people over here that I can't normally meet in the UK.
The greatest value for us is networking. The opportunity to meet with different people from different companies that we wouldn't normally talk to. The other thing is that AdvaMed afforded us the opportunity to present the company yesterday. So we participated in their speed dating, if you will, present the company yesterday, and we got some very good response from potential investors.
As far as the quality of the sessions, the quality of the speakers, the ability to be able to have a mix of industry, government, advocates, and technologists like myself to be able to come together and be able to truly network, understand what some of the issues are, see what some of the strategies are for the future. It's been great.
We've been involved with AdvaMed for several years now, and it's a great organization, and it's an important date in our calendar because it's an opportunity, I think, to meet a lot of the people in the industry who we work with, get to know people that we would like to work with, and also to hear a lot more about what's happening in the industry, what the key issues are going to be, the key challenges, and that's something that Ireland needs to stay abreast of.
And talking to peers and people in this industry is tremendously exciting. So AdvaMed is a great opportunity for networking and getting to know new ideas and new people.
Coming up later in the show, we'll have more on the wide variety of companies, institutions, and researchers who attended the conference. A lot of topics were covered at this year's conference, but one of the bigger ones that was on everyone's mind was the confusion surrounding the FDA's proposed changes to the 510K process.
First and foremost, we understand the FDA. They're there for the safety, the efficacy of medical products. We fully support that agenda, but all of us that are involved in innovation in our company, that is what we do. I mean, we have grown since 1964 when the company was founded. We've grown primarily through innovation and investing in research and development, and we're very concerned about what some of these proposed changes will do to the business. I mean, there are some things within the proposed changes that they're making that actually make good sense. There are some things that I think would make it more challenging for companies to bring new technology to the marketplace.
FDA Chief Dr. Margaret Hamburg spoke before medical device industry leaders with a heavy focus on the proposed changes to the 510K approval process. She said that the FDA's plan to revamp that process will not be a decision made in a vacuum, but one driven by a need for balance between safety and innovation. They will also take into account any, quote, substantive concerns raised during a public comment period. She said, quote, "We are really undertaking a serious, thoughtful process of review of all the comments as we shape the process. As we go forward, there will still be opportunities for comment, feedback, discussion, and shaping." Industry leaders we spoke to believe that the FDA is listening to their concerns and hope common ground can be reached, but there are challenges ahead.
We are pleased to see the sort of growing alignment around, as Jim talked about, the taxonomy of support with modification and oppose, that if you look at the comments that have been submitted, not just from AdvaMed, but the regional groups, from MDMA, from MITA, from the regional groups, from the National Venture Capital Association, all the stakeholders who are involved in the innovation process seem to be focused on the same issues of the greatest amount of concern.
Issues behind things like quality systems, what needs to be done for that from that perspective, and preparing for manufacturing as part of the PMA submissions. You know, many companies, you know, may have put their business strategies upon the idea that their device would go through a 510K process because there's already predicate devices, you know, that have shown that. So for now, going back and having the fear of, well, is the FDA going to, you know, call this a 510K, or am I going to be going through a PMA? Am I going to go through a clinical trial? How am I going to do that? Many of these companies don't even know how to go through a clinical trial. There's a lot of fear and uncertainty that's going on within the industry right now.
This morning, the talk from Margaret Homburg was very enlightening about how she's thinking and the FDA is thinking about regulatory changes. We as an industry have experienced a bit of a slow approval process within the United States, and we're hoping that with all this goodwill that's currently generated, that we will move that on and that we'll actually get some of our products faster and better approved in the future.
Dr. Hamburg said the agency plans to release a summary of the comments it's received, flagging the recommendations it plans to put in place. She also says they will explain why a particular recommendation would move forward and that all the related information will be made public by year's end. Meanwhile, a new twist in the story, a bipartisan group of lawmakers is slowing the FDA's drive to overhaul the 510K process. The group is calling for more transparency and an economic impact analysis. The group sent a letter to Dr. Hamburg reminding her of the agency's promise to focus first on recommendations that have consensus among all parties. So tell us what you think about this story or any story that you see in today's show. It's very simple. Click on the orange button below me. A box will pop up. Type in your comment. Send it to me. I promise I'll read and respond to every one of them. And when you're done watching BeakerBeat, check out Beaker's blog where we go further in depth into the proposed changes to the 510K process. That and more on Beaker's blog. Another topic that was top of mind was the economy and the effect it's having on the industry.
But I think the bottom line is going to be a continued focus, you know, overseas and internationally for growth and opportunities economically for the United States and the healthcare industry.
In the States, I think we'll be looking somewhere between 8 and 12 jobs by the end of 2011. But I think in our plans, the lowest case plan we've got would show creating another 100 jobs in the States. With it by 2014.
That we probably have felt the effects of the economy more in 2010 than we did in 2008 and 2009. While some other industries are recovering this year, you know, we're still feeling the effects of it. But the bottom line is that we have focused on making sure that we can take advantage of all growth opportunities, not only here in the United States but around the world. We're making sure that we're growing profitably. You know, we're managing the bottom line. We're managing cash very, very conservatively to make sure that we are well positioned, you know, to manage our way through these challenging economic times. And also, quite frankly, we're well positioned for growth and accelerated growth when the economy does start to recover.
So over the next year, I think you'll continue to see M&A activity at a brisk rate. We're seeing a lot of things in the pipeline right now. So I think the credit markets continuing to be open at a very attractive rate will really fuel M&A. I think early stage VC will continue to look to alternative financing sources, whether that's corporate venture capital or state and local governments, which is where they've been able to tap into to fund that development. And I think you're going to see, you know, continued expansion into emerging markets, and primarily seeing mergers and acquisitions as the vehicle to really enable the growth in those sectors where there's some stickiness to the acquired assets.
Now, another one of the big topics was the effects of the health care bill that was recently passed and how it's going to affect the entire industry.
The short term is going to be price pressure. I think we've already seen it. Distributors last year, especially in the third and fourth quarter, got tremendous pressure on pricing. And I think the reaction to that has to be long term is that we as manufacturers come up with better solutions at lower price points.
I think it's going to be very, very good for us in the long run. I think we've now got a situation where the reform having been done, there's a lot of talk about what's the Reform Act going to look like, moving on with how do you actually implement it. And sitting there yesterday with Commissioner Berwick, standing out there with his called his triple aim of better care, better health, lower cost, is absolutely moving health policy into our sweet spot. That's what we do, and seeing those that sort of system-wide push towards there is going to be very good for us.
The overall thesis is that this is going to expand coverage in the future, which is going to expand the numbers. That has to be measured against the pricing headwinds which they are going to encounter and it'll be a trade-off between the increase in volume, which I think everyone is comfortable with, and really what is the pricing that's going to be acceptable, at those volumes.
Novartis Diagnostics is testing blood transfusions. So we are the ones who make sure that the blood supply in the United States is safe. We have about 80% market share. So any healthcare reform that is broadening access to healthcare is good for us, because that means that more people get the benefit of our products, more people need blood transfusions.
Time for some quick hits now, and Johnson & Johnson has yet another recall on its hands, and I can't land a punch. J&J's embattled McNeil Consumer Healthcare Unit added its 8-hour Tylenol product to the list of 11 pulled off store shelves in recent months. Just like before, this batch drew complaints of a musty or moldy odor. Like the other stinky batches, this one seems to be caused by a chemical known as 2,4,6-tribromonosol, which sounds like a high school cheer, but is actually used as a preservative on wood pallets used for storage and shipping of drugs. Sounds delicious. The Wall Street Journal reports that this latest recall affects only 127,000 bottles, which is minuscule considering the company has recalled more than 150 million units of OTC drugs. The quality issues seem to be having an effect on sales. The company missed analyst estimates for third quarter revenues by about $200 million as consumer product sales dropped more than expected. As if that wasn't enough, the drug maker lost a jury verdict in a Risperdal marketing case in Louisiana, its second loss in a state court. The case was based on J&J's claims that Risperdal was safer than competing antipsychotic drugs. The panel found 35,000 violations and penalized J&J $7,200 for each one, a grand total of over $257 million. Hey Jeremy, doesn't this remind you of something?
Oh, you'll never do that. Don't touch the side. Checking
money matters. GE Healthcare will acquire molecular diagnostics and imaging firm Clariant for around $580 million. Siwan Pharma, China's largest cardio-cerebral vascular drug maker, raised $741 million at its IPO. Actelion announced a share buyback worth $829 million and reiterated its desire to stay independent. Pfizer will pay about $240 million up front to enter a partnership with a Brazilian drug maker to develop and sell generic drugs. And finally, St. Jude Medical is paying about $1.3 billion to buy out Minnesota-based AGA Medical. St. Jude will pay $20 a share, a 41% premium. Finally, device makers weren't the only attendees at AdvaMed 2010, the MedTech Conference.
Business is all about the management and distribution of content as part of a sales process in the life sciences industry, and what we do is we help manage the battle between revenue and risk. And if you're familiar with all the settlements that are going on today for unapproved use case marketing, that's a problem we know how to help companies address.
AdvaMed 2010 has been an ideal opportunity for us to engage with existing clients, to catch up, and also to connect with potential new clients for Ireland, and to connect at the levels of particular relevance to us at executive level, to enable us to engage in conversations around Ireland as a business location.
Well, this is for us basically to showcase our best technologies. What we have is a translational partnership that was formed by the Culture Foundation. They have funded 10 schools with $5 million over 5 years, with the goal of bringing early-stage biomedical technologies closer to the patient. So our mission is to commercialize early-stage university technology. And Duke University was fortunate enough to be one of these schools. And after 5 years, we went through a very rigorous process, and we are here to showcase the technologies that we funded. Very excited to be here. This is really the first time that we are showing up at any conference, and it's been a fantastic experience so far, so we hope to be back next year.
Well, that's it for this week's edition of BeakerBeat. I'm Mike Justice. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.
Sit, Beaker, sit. Good dog.
In the face! In the face! I'm gonna hit you in the face, Jeremy. I've been wanting to do this for months. Hit you in the face. Cut me, Lou! Cut me!